Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. As promised, this is your DC Spotlight for the DC Pride Anthology. This is, I guess, the second volume. They did a DC Pride last year, and now they're bringing it back this year. I'm pretty sure last year that all the creators involved were identify as LBGTQ plus. I know for a fact this year everybody for sure does, and I think that was the case last year. Maybe there were some letters that didn't, but I mean for the most part, certainly the writers and the artists, and that's the case again this year. So it's June is Pride Month, and it's great that these people who have been marginalized for so long are getting representation in comics. That being said, this is not exactly the book that's aimed at us. We're not exactly the audience, straight white guys who never have had a problem looking at comics and the characters therein and, seeing who I identify with represented. I mean, I'm kind of the default, right? Live life on the easy setting, as it were. Even though I'm half Hispanic, I don't look at it all, and I've never really been like prejudiced against or anything like that. And Rocky's Canadian, so he's had his own share of prejudices over the years. But again, I'm glad that this exists. I'm glad that people are getting to see heroes and stories with people that they can identify with. Hey, that person's like me. That person's non-binary, or that person's lesbian, or that person's gay, or whatever. So I think it's great. Now, that being said, if some people think it's too political or it's too like in your face, nobody's forcing you to buy this. It's certainly not ruining comics. It's one book. And here's the thing, like you have whatever, 70 years, 7 decades, 8 decades of books to be able to go back and look at where it wasn't this, right? So even if the pendulum is swinging a little bit too far, and this is a little too in your face, I think that's okay because again, they've been neglected for so long. And kind of on that note, before I give the credits, Rocky's got it up on the screen right now. Is it Nicole or is it Natalie? I always forget.
It says
Yeah,
forward by Nicole.
Nicole. Yeah, Nicole Maines, who's a transgender actress. She was in Supergirl. She played Dreamer, and in last year's Pride, she wrote the Dreamer story in there and introduced her. It was her that character's debut in comics. That's the character she played on the Supergirl show. And she talks in this forward, and I would suggest that everybody picks this up, read it. She talks about certainly where she grew up in Maine, that there was nobody around her that she could look to or ask advice of, or, there was nobody that she could identify with, nobody like her. And certainly, and she's not that old. I think she's in her early 20s. So, even you don't have to go that far back before you didn't really see transgender or LGBTQ stuff like on television or whatever. I think it was the Ellen show, right? That had like the first or same-sex kiss on a show, and that I remember that being a big deal, and that was like the mid '90s, right? So it's not in the context of human, society, human civilization. It hasn't been that long, so it's great again that this is happening now, and it's representation and it's diversity. And I know for some people those are like bad words, but man, just live and let live, right? If two people love each other and they want to be together, I don't really care what sex they are. It doesn't affect my life. And I feel like the people that scream and rail against it and say it's ruining, society or whatever, it's like, because you're letting it bother you. Like, live and let live. If they're not hurting anybody and they're not harming anybody, then, more power to them. So I do encourage you to read that story from Nicole, or that article, that introduction, because it does give some perspective on why these types of stories are important. So that being said, I think there's 10 or 12 stories in here, so there's a lot to cover. So it's over 100 pages. So let me give the credits and we'll start diving in. First story, Super Pride, written by Devin Grayson. Nick Robles is the artist. Triona Farrell on colors. Aditya Bidikar on letters. Then we have Confessions by Stephanie Williams as writer. Megan Hetrick is the artist. Marisa Louise on colors. Ariana Mayer on letters. Think of Me by Rose Stein and Ted Brandt, writer and artist. Frank Vetikovic on letters. Up at Bat by Jadza Axelrod. Lynn Yoshi is the artist. Tamara Bonvillain does the colors. Ariana Mayer on letters. A World Just A World Kept Just for Me by Alyssa Wong as the writer. W. Scott Forbes is the artist. Ariana Mayer on letters. The Gumshoe in Green, written by Tinny Howard. Evan Cagle the artist. Lucas Gattoni on letters. Public Display of Electromagnetism, written by Greg Lockhart. Giuliano Macchione is the artist. Aditya Bidikar on letters. Bats in the Cradle by Stephanie Phillips as the writer. Samantha Dodge is the artist. Marisa Louise on colors and Louis Gattone on letters. Special Delivery, written and drawn, excuse me, by Travis Moore. Enrica Aaron Angiolini is the colorist. Ariana Mayer on letters. The Hunt by Danny Fernandez as the writer. Zoe Thorogood is the artist. Jeremy Lawson on colors. Aditya Bidikar on letters. Are You Ready for This? Written by Danny Lohr and Ivan Cohen. Brittany Williams is the artist. Enrica Aaron Angiolini is the colorist. And Ariana Mayer on letters. And finally, Finding Batman, written by Kevin Conroy. That's right, the voice of Batman from the animated series. Is the writer. Jay Bone as the artist. And Aditya Bidikar on letters. There's also some pinups. There's a Shining Knight pinup by P. Craig Russell. There's a Ghostmaker pinup by J.J. Kirby. Galaxy and Dreamer by Jess Taylor and Rye Hickman. So let's go ahead and dive into the first story. It's interesting because not every single character in this book, the main characters, is LGBTQ, because we have Damien here, but he's teamed up with Superboy, John Kent. So the dynamic here is so strange for me. That's the thing that I kind of focused on, because as I was reading it, I sort of forgot about their relationship. I really forgot how close they were. I forgot that they, basically had their own title, the Super Sons, for quite a while.
Yeah.
Because John seems so much older and I don't want to say wiser, but kind of more mature than Damien. And Damien's kind of he comes across a little bit as a little kid in the story. So much so that, I forgot. And they used to be so like on the same wavelength. So, it didn't necessarily remind me of that thing that we hate that we won't talk about. But I just thought it was interesting. And then I didn't realize till later. I'm like, oh, wait a second. These guys were best friends. And now that their relationship has definitely changed and evolved. But it's a fine story. It didn't blow me away. Seeing Superman, again, Superboy, Superman, whatever you want to call him, wearing a cape that has the rainbow inside of it, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty interesting that he was a little nervous to, be seen on a float riding in this pride parade. But I think it's true that what they tell him, like, this is exactly what your dad would do. Maybe he wouldn't wear the cape with the rainbow inside because he himself is not gay, but I don't know. Maybe he would. Maybe Superman would. He's certainly all about representation. So, this was a fine story. I thought the art by Nick Robles was fine. The colors are really bright by Triona Farrell. Very much suits kind of the rainbow feel of the story. So I thought this was a good one to start off with. So Devin Grayson did a good job. I wish Devin Grayson wrote more DC stuff. She was a really good writer back in the day for DC. I enjoyed a lot of the stuff that she did, especially on Nightwing. So anyway, what did you think of the first story?
Well, the first story I think is probably I thought it was maybe one of the better ones here. I thought it did a very good job of, Superman. John Kent is clearly the highest profile, probably not the most popular LGBTQ member of the DC universe. That's probably Harley Quinn with Poison Ivy, but John Kent is probably right up there, a fairly high profile character. And this story really ends with him saying, "Today, here, right now, I want it to mean that I see you, that I am you." And he's speaking to other people who are LGBTQ. And so that's the strong message that comes across. And I want to be very clear here that there's two ways that I'm going to be reviewing these stories. And the one thing I can say about all of them, this one in particular, is that if you're someone, I can easily see that if you're a member of the LGBT community and you just like romance and you like superheroes and you love comics, this really is something for you. You're going to enjoy this because this has superheroes, being, kissing each other, showing love, showing support. This is it. And so full kudos to all these stories that has that. Now I'm going to criticize some of the characterizations, which are a little off. And this is written by Devin Grayson, good writer, but Damian Wayne would never act like this. Uh, Damian Wayne, if John Kent asked Damian Wayne, do you think it's a good idea that I wear a pride cape for a parade? Damian Wayne might say to him, like Damian Wayne did say here. Damian did tell him that, well, your dad would support you. Your dad would, of course, support you. Of course he would. But Damian Wayne would probably say something more on the lines of, well, your enemies are probably going to throw homophobic slurs at you. Your enemies are going to use it against you. I would think Damien would be a little bit more in your face with the criticism, not of who his best friend is, because they're super sons, they're best friends. But I think I picture Damien being a little bit more protective of him, saying, "You sure you want to do this? Because this is what's going to happen to you, and your enemies are going to do this, and your enemies are going to do that. They're going to use this. They're going to use this against you." I think that would have been a more interesting way of bringing in sort of the prejudice in society into the story. I realize it's just a short story, and maybe I'm being, again, I'm looking at it from a character point of view. And that wasn't the point of the story. I get that, but I would have liked to have been Damien just a little bit more protective and saying, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Because, Damien will protect him. And, Damien would kick the butt out of anybody that would insult or throw a slur at his friend. But it's a minor nitpick. But beyond that, the art was great. And, the idea of Superman, John Kent wearing that pride cape, I really thought it was a nice message for anyone reading the story.
Yeah, I sort of feel the same way, and it goes back to what I said. Like, there's aspects of these stories that I don't particularly care for. It doesn't have anything to do with it being, same sex couples. If if this were a Valentine's Day issue, and every story ended up with, the people that are in a relationship kissing, that's just not my cup of tea. It's like romance comics, it's not my thing. So it's not that they're same sex kissing. It's that, man, every one of them, like, story ends with a kiss. I mean, it's not true. Not every one ends with a kiss, but it's like there's snuggling and whatever. And again, I totally get it, and I don't have a problem with it, because it's like, man, this hasn't been a thing, right? And this needs to be out there, and these stories need to be told. And people, it needs to be normalized, because it is normal for people to love each other regardless of their sex. So I get it, but at the same time, it's kind of, they're kind of romance stories, and again, it's just not my particular cup of tea. So as we move on to the second story, that's exactly what we see. So again, Stephanie Williams writing, Megan Hetrick, Marisa Louise, Ariana Mayer. It's called Confessions, and Nubia is telling the story about this sword that Io had made for her, and she had broken it in a fight in Man's World, and she's making the confession that she didn't really break it the way that she initially said she did, or had told her she did. She defeats this wild green bird pretty easily, actually. And what happens is, as she finishes that battle relatively quickly, Big Barda shows up and recruits Nubia to come and be part of this wrestling match that's going to benefit some LGBTQ charity. And that's in this match fighting against Giganta. It's a tag team match. That's how the sword gets broken. And I guess Nubia was just a little embarrassed to say so. So I was like, really, Nubia? I don't think anything less of you, because you were wrestling. It just shows that, you're somebody who's going to help people that are in need. And you heard that, Barda needed somebody to fill in because this other Amazon angel person that was supposed to be at the show dropped out for whatever reason and couldn't make it. So I did appreciate that sentiment of it. It's showing that Nubia, she doesn't limit who she helps to Themyscira or her Amazonian sisters, or people outside of Man's World or people in Man's World. She's gonna, if she hears that there's somebody in need, she's gonna help them. So I like that. And the other part of this is, I I could swear that, did we have a story, something of Nubia in the recent past where she she was involved with a man in a past life? Was that her, or am I thinking of a different Amazon that came out of the Well of Souls? Because I
Uh,
thought I thought, wasn't it in the
Well,
anthology that we just had,
well,
where Nubia was remembering back to a previous her previous life before she came out of the Well of
well,
Souls?
she was a princess. Yeah,
Yeah,
she was a princess in a far off land, but I don't know.
I thought.
I
Yeah, I
think she
thought.
had a husband. Yeah, I think she did
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something. Yeah, she had a
yeah. I thought.
husband. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
So,
She is.
so that
I
is
believe
yeah
she's
that is
bisexual. I
yeah, and
Nubia. Yeah,
that's kind of what I'm getting at.
yeah.
Like, and you and I have had this conversation before. It's like anybody who thinks that women, because again, no, for a long time, no man was allowed to set foot on Themyscira. These very vital and energetic and beautiful women, you think they're all on that island themselves and they don't have any kind of sexual desires and they're not hooking up? Like, that's ridiculous to think. So
Yeah.
I like the idea of, I would think that, based on that situation, that most Amazons would be bisexual. So, uh, again, don't
Or
have a
you
problem with
think
it.
the Well of Souls would make them bisexual, but that's probably a touchy issue itself. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of cruel if you're not. If I mean, imagine being on an island and you're a woman and there's only women. I mean, it'd be kind of cruel if you weren't attracted to women. But again, that's a that's another topic.
Yeah. But yeah,
But
I mean, again, if everybody, we should remind everybody, we should have said it at the beginning. If you're looking for our thoughts on the other DC books, it's on the DC Spotlight yesterday, and then there was a separate one just for Dark Crisis. But Rocky and I, we both thought that there was potential in Nubia and the Amazons, a new number one that started. It's called New Beginnings. But man, it just seems like it's always potential with Nubia, and it never pays off. So,
yeah.
um, did this pay off for you? Did you find that? Because I
Well,
actually enjoyed this short story more than that
well,
Nubia number one.
Uh, I'll give some credit to Stephanie Williams because she incorporated wrestling. It's like WWF
Yeah,
wrestling here with Big
yeah,
Barda and you know Giganta. So that it was kind of funny. I think I think the art was not. I thought the art was a little bit felt a little bit amateurish. Megan Petrick on the art is not really. I find that the backgrounds weren't really that prominent or anything else, but and the color, the colors by Marisa Louise weren't. Um, I guess they weren't bad, but altogether, this was fun. This was, I mean, this was a fun. I mean, this is exactly the type of story you expect in an anthology. And whenever you have some good old fashioned wrestling, it's for a good cause. And it reminded me a little bit of that scene in Rocky 3 with Rocky Balboa fighting the Hulk Hogan, where it suddenly becomes serious and what have you. So is it, I think I could tell that Stephanie Williams, I think she probably had some fun writing it, and Megan Petrick had some fun drawing it. So it's a good little story, and and again, it's got a nice. It's called Confessions because in an intimate way, Nubia sort of is confessing what really happened to the sword, and it was sweet. It was sweet. So I think a lot of people will get a kick out of it.
yeah. And again, the wrestling aspect of it, like you mentioned, did that there are a lot of there's a lot of crossover fans that love wrestling and love comics. So, okay, up next we have the Green Arrow story, and this is the not Oliver Queen, but Connor Hawk by Rothstein and Ted Brandt. And this was interesting. I always assumed that that Connor Hawk was either gay or bisexual, but we find out. And again, I haven't read every Connor Hawk story, but I certainly read the. I was reading Green Arrow at the time that he was introduced, and I did enjoy that run in the '90s of him. But yeah, this one in the context, it's sort of narrated with this letter that he's trying to write to his mom, where he's confessing to her that he's asexual. So, and while he's doing that, he's fighting against the Music Master. Is that the guy's name? I think so. Um,
uh,
which, yeah, I've never heard of this
the
guy, and it's kind of, yeah, kind of.
Cacophonous. Is that his name? Cacophonous, or maybe I don't know. Sorry.
I thought he said it was Music Master, but maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe it
Yeah,
is.
Music Meister. That's
Meister.
it.
Meister.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
this should keep you out of trouble until I've gotten what I need from Music Meister. And he puts in some earplugs. So, yeah, I do find it interesting that he's attacking this guy who's uses sound as a weapon in this opera theater because obviously opera acting, a lot of masks, a lot of being something you're not, and it kind of mirrors very well what's being told in the letter. So I thought this one was really clever, kind of metatextually, and yeah, I learned something I didn't know about Connor Hawke. I didn't realize. So one good thing about this one is it doesn't end in a kiss, right? Because he doesn't.
He doesn't
He's
care.
not attracted to men or women. Yeah, he doesn't care. And then Damien shows up at the end, and he's just like, man. And I do love what Damien has to say here, and it's great that they brought Damien in at the end because he's like, man, take it from a person who knows complicated maternal relationships, right? Because obviously his mother's Talia al Ghul, his relationship with her always complicated. It's like some things are better said in person, and yeah, um, that's true. And I mean, again, this is a story going back to what we said at the beginning, where maybe somebody who's having a hard time coming out to their parents or friends or whoever can read this and take that line that Damien says, hey, some things are better said in person, and will give them the courage to say what they need to say in person, because man, it's hard to hide who you are. I don't have to tell a lot of people that lived through it and know better than I, but I thought that was a good way to end the story. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Anything to add?
Well, the line that most hit me, he said, is when everyone in the orchestra thinks your silence is an aberration or an aberration. And I guess he gets really tired of being teased about going out on dates, and he doesn't really want to go on dates. And he imagines and he loves and he desires to have companionship, but not with his body, more with his mind. He likes having a meeting of the minds, and I guess that's asexual. You don't want to mate with anybody. But that doesn't mean that you don't want to form lasting friendships and have that feeling, that bond and what have you. I honestly, this was a little bit the whole asexuality thing. I fully confess to be. I guess I need to be educated more on it. I have a very difficult time thinking that this is that this. I wouldn't even put. I didn't think that was a letter in the alphabet of LGBTQ, that asexuality is really a thing. I've heard of it before, but um, I think it's a little. I actually, full disclosure, I thought it was a little silly when they said they were making Hawk asexual. Why? Like, it just seems, why? Why not, wouldn't I think he has more story potential if you put him in relationships once in a while. But it's all well and good, I guess. I guess I'll never know if I've ever. I'm sure have I met a lot of people that are asexual? I have no idea. When would that ever come up in conversation? Uh, I've never thought of somebody who hasn't had a date at a prom or something as, oh well, maybe he's asexual. Okay. But I don't know. This is, in many ways, maybe this is just another thing that an old conservative like me, I got to be educated about. And I guess, admittedly, I got to admit, comic books in the last 10 years, I've gotten educated a little bit, and it's sort of maybe helped me open my minds and broaden my minds a little bit. And so this is it's interesting. It's interesting. I didn't know Hawk was asexual, and it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know how I hope they just leave it alone. I don't know how that can really make, maybe necessarily does it really matter in terms of a story element, but we'll see what they do with it. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that is something that's interesting, right? Like I talked about, not necessarily enjoying seeing these people kiss their interpersonal relationships. I really can only think of like Superman and Lois, that really, where you see some part of the relationship in the comics. It did used to be the case, certainly in things like Teen Titans under Wolfman and Perez. We had the wedding of Donna Troy, and all, it very much saw stuff with their private life. Same thing with the X-Men. We'd see their, Kurt's girlfriend, or you had Colossus and Kitty, and that sort of thing, and that stuff's sort of gone away. And I don't say that I don't want to see it to the point where I never want to see it, but I don't need every story, like I'm saying, to end with it. But I guess if you're looking for, some drama, I don't see why you couldn't still have drama with somebody who's asexual. The drama would instead be somebody who's attracted to them and they're rebuffing, and that could cause some tension. Maybe it's mean spirited. I don't know. But I do agree with you a little bit on it. And I think it all comes down to, like, when did you discover the character, and is it a character that you really like and enjoy and have a particular idea in your head of who they are, right? So, and even though Connor Hawke was somebody that I enjoyed, he wasn't somebody that I like, oh my God, I totally identify with him, and now that he's asexual, it bothers me. It bothers me a little more Tim Drake. Um, because I thought I knew who Tim Drake was, and turns out, we're going to get to the Tim Drake story here in a minute. Um,
Yeah.
but that one, I don't want, and again, I don't want to say that it bothers me. It's just, it takes a period of adjustment to change the idea in your head of okay, this character to me was this, and now there's something else, something being added to them. Actually, it's this additive, where it sort of changes. And again, Tim Drake's young enough. I mean, you're like, well, didn't he go out with Stephanie Brown? Didn't he have a relationship with female? Well, yeah. I mean, he was young at the time. He was like junior high, high school, so still figuring it out. Maybe he didn't realize at the time. So, yeah. But I don't know why it doesn't bother me at all that Connor Hawk's asexual, or
Yeah.
I don't give. I should say, because again, it doesn't bother me that Tim Drake is gay or bisexual. Um, but I didn't give a second thought to Connor Hawk being asexual. Where I did give like Tim. I find out Tim Drake isn't heterosexual, and I got to stop and I got to like digest that. I got to
That's
process that a little bit.
yeah.
But for Connor, I didn't. It just, so in a way, it's interesting because I don't really remember any of the stories of Connor that I read where he had any relationships with,
Yeah,
men or
I can't
women.
remember anyway. I can't remember either.
Yeah,
Maybe if somebody's listening and they want to comment down below, I can't remember Connor Hawk ever having a
so maybe, yeah,
girlfriend. I mean, he was raised
maybe
by
that makes it
monks, but I
easier.
mean, I don't know. Maybe he had an
Yeah,
experience with a monk. I don't know.
yeah, maybe that's what turned him off of sex.
Yeah,
Uh,
it traumatized
but
him.
yeah, maybe maybe that's why it makes it easier for me to accept that Connor, that I don't give it a second thought. So
Yeah.
anyway, the next story, Up to Bat. This one stars Alyssa Wong, and I've heard the name, and I know she's been a supporting character in some, like, either Birds of Prey or Batgirl or something before, but I gotta admit to not being, um, really familiar with the character. But
Yeah.
this one was okay. She ends up beating Killer Moth, and granted, Killer Moth is not the most formidable villain, but he's still a villain, and she's just, as far as I know, just an average person. So, I mean, she does take a lot of punishment before she finally manages to defeat Killer Moth. But it kind of reminded me of this week's Batman issue, where I didn't think that the female detective, and she's a police detective, so she's got more training than this person, and she just puts on a costume and she's able to hold her own against multiple assailants. So that kind of reminded me of this, and then of course very tropey that Barbara Gordon gives her the costume that she puts on to defeat Killer Moth. So I expect to see more of Alyssa Wong in the future, because I think she's going to be in some TV show, or maybe she was in Batwoman. I don't know. I remember hearing something about her, or no, maybe she's going to be a character in the Batgirl movie. That's what it is. Because I remember, I think Alyssa Wong is a character that Gail Simone created, and I remember seeing Gail talking about it online, how excited she was that a character she created was going to be in the Batgirl movie. Um, so yeah, I don't know that much about her. I thought it was her defeating Killer Moth, even though again it's Killer Moth. He's only one step above Kite Man. I still thought it was just it was a little far fetched, but the story was fine. And this is another one where it didn't, like, this could just be a regular story. Like, this doesn't, there's nothing in here that you think, oh, Alyssa Wong is a lesbian. So I don't know. This was one that stood out for that reason, in a good way. So, what do you think?
Yeah, well, Alyssa Wong, I think she's trans. It starts. She's at
Oh,
a
gotcha.
trans
Okay.
conference. So,
Oh, okay.
uh,
Gotcha.
and I always I always mix it up. I, I'm not, I'm not sure what's the difference between a trans woman and a trans man. When you're born with organ, and
Yeah,
I don't
yeah. So
know.
I
It's
think if you're a trans woman, you were born with male parts, and you've transitioned to a woman, so you're trans
okay.
woman. And if you're a
Okay.
trans man, you were born with female parts and you transition to a man. So
Yeah.
yeah, so she's a
So
trans woman. Yeah.
yeah, and this is this story is and again as a story, this is taking this trans character and elevating her, giving her some agency to be a hero in her own right, give her a bat, help her defend Batgirl from Killer Moth, who planted a tracking device on Barbara Gordon, and this Lynn character is helping Batgirl and defends her valiantly, and it's a good art by Lin Yoshi. I thought it was very well done. I actually think Lin, that she looks like a sexy character. God forbid. And so hey, this is a sexy character, interesting character. She's kick ass. She uh, clearly at the beginning of the story, she's fighting for trans rights. She's expressing some doubt and some depression about uh, uh, how difficult it is to get to to be trans and to fight for for I guess equality and what have you. And in fact, she expresses the sentiment expressed by the character Lynn. She Lynn here is the same thing that Nicole Maines did at the introduction of this Pride anthology. So a lot of those sentiments that Nicole Maines has in her opening pages are reflected in this character here, and to good effect. I mean, yeah, again, it wasn't bad. Uh, uh, yeah, and I don't. It'll be interesting to see if she is in the Batgirl movie. This character is this is new. I'm not familiar with this character at all, and I guess it's not surprising because I think this character's only a couple of years old, right? Like
Yeah, I think
created,
so.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, not bad.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in the last 10 years. So yeah, interesting. All right, let's move on. The next story. I mean, this is probably my favorite art in the book. I thought the art was really fantastic in the Jackson Hyde story. Um, it's almost like a painted quality, digital painted. So it's really soft in places.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was done really really well by W. Scott Forbes. I'm not really familiar with his art. I haven't seen it before, but it's written by Alyssa Wong, and it's nice. I mean, here's another character where again I don't give it a second thought. Jackson Hyde, as far as I know, was always homosexual. So again, it's not. I'm not trying to Okay, I used to think of him as this way. Now I'm trying to think of him as this other way. We've seen him flirt with I think it's Highway, I think is how you pronounce it. It's another Zebellian
Yeah.
who we saw recently in one of the limited series, I think Aquaman Becoming, where they were kind of making googly eyes at each other at one of the brunches that Jackson had with his family, so with his mom. So yeah, I thought this was nice. It was kind of fun, and it gave some good perspective. I almost felt like because basically what happens in the story is again Jackson Hyde Zebellian, but his mother, because Jackson was the son of Black Manta, and once his mother realized who Black Manta was, she took Jackson Hyde. They moved to New Mexico, as far from the water as they could get, trying to keep him away from the influence of his father. Um, so he didn't grow up in Zabel, and he doesn't know that much about it. So Hawway takes him to meet his family, and he's kind of learning about his true heritage or whatever. So I appreciated that. I appreciated that how accepting Hawway's family was, not only of Jackson but also of Hawway himself. Obviously, no problem with him being um, homosexual, and I never stopped to think about it. Like our society still has problems with it, right? There's still frontiers and prejudice and all that kind of stuff. You wonder about it, like what Atlantis? What is Zebellians? Is it a thing there? We talked about how it would in Themyscira it probably wouldn't be a thing because that's the only action you can get. So I thought it was interesting, but getting the perspective of Jackson, because so basically they go to Hawway's place first, and then they visit his quote hometown, and then they go to Jackson's hometown. So and Jackson was worried about showing Hawway because it's not like he grew up in a great place, kind of a middle of nowhere, New Mexico, and Jackson's talking about having to hide who he was as a Zebellian, but also in a way it's very much a metaphor for having to hide his sexuality as well. And he talks about being sort of, he's like, I was worried to bring you here. It's kind of embarrassing. I don't really have the greatest childhood, don't have the best memories of this place. Like, I think this is important, like character work for Jackson Hyde. This stuff should have been in Aquaman Becoming,
Yeah.
or in the Aquaman series that's going on right now. Like, again, the relationship stuff between him and Hawway, whatever, if they want to be boyfriend and boyfriend, whatever, I don't care. That's to me not the strength of the story. The strength of the story is the character work for Jackson, and there's a little bit of character work for Hawway too. And if Jackson gets his own series, or there's something else coming after Aquaman that Jackson's in, if Hawway was a supporting character, as they're in a relationship, I wouldn't have a problem with that either, because I think he does have potential as a character. But again, the strength of this, I think, is this characterization of Jackson, and I feel like the context that we're given here should have been in one of those other series that I mentioned. So I did enjoy this one. And the last thing I have to mention is well, I guess it's the same artist that does the color work now that I look at it, because there's nobody listed as a color artist. So W. Scott Forbes is doing the line work and the colors, because the colors are outstanding as well. Sometimes they're a little more uh, sort of misty looking. Other times they're really saturated and dark. I particularly love the second to last panel of the story. We get just half of Jackson's face, and his eye is just so blue. It looks really really great. So anyway, I did enjoy that story, especially for the context that it brings to Jackson Hyde as a character. And again, I think it's important stuff for Jackson, but a lot of people, even people who are fans of Aquaman, are may miss this, and that's a shame. I wish they'd put that somewhere else where more people might have seen it.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I echo your sentiments. In particular, I thought it was very interesting. I did not know, or I think maybe I kind of knew Jackson Hyde's origin, but I've long forgotten it, quite frankly. And this, I actually learned something about the character. You nailed it when you said there was actually some character development here, or if this was said before, this is a character reminder to me that, oh, that's right. And to bring his character growth, and that, and relating it to his discovery of his sexuality, and always hiding in the desert with his mother, told to hide, and to fit in, to be normal, look normal when he didn't feel normal. That was a very, very good way, and I thought a very effective way to say, well, that's actually pretty good. And like you said, that this is probably something that just a couple of those panels, three or four of them in his main story with Jackson Hyde, with Aquaman the Becoming. It's really sad that that wasn't in there as well, because this is it's very well done here. And yeah, it was to really good effect. And the art by W. Scott Forbes is excellent. And kudos to to writer Alyssa Wong, and letterer Ariana Mayer. This was well done.
Yeah, the next one might be aesthetically my favorite of just the tone of it. Gumshoe and Green. Tinny Howard's the writer, Evan Cagle the artist, Lucas Gattoni does the letters. It's mostly in black and white, but then we have like green, like the dialogue boxes are in green. Some of the drinks they're drinking are green.
Yeah,
Until the end, we get a little splash of color. It stars Joe Mullen, who is the Green Lantern that starred in Far Sector. I'm not sure what her. I think she's just lesbian, but I'm not 100% sure. Um, but what's interesting, I love again what this says. She's back in the Far Sector. She's kind of playing this detective, what she likes to do. It even says, Gumshoe and Green and a Far Sector mystery. There's allusions to the story of that was in Far Sector, and if you don't necessarily have to have read it, but if you've read it, this will make a lot more sense, because she's talking about how some people are like sentient plants and whatnot. Other people are sort of cat people. But if you read that, it makes sense. They're basically just aliens that she's sort of putting these labels on.
yeah,
But what I liked about the story is this idea that Joe Mullen pushes back against, that if you're homosexual, that you just desire everybody of the opposite sex, right? So I guess she must be. Now that I think about it, Joe Mullen must
she's
be bi.
she is
Yeah,
bisexual. Yeah,
yeah. Because basically, what happens in the story is this woman comes in to hire her. This woman, she's one of the plant species. She comes in to hire her, and she says, "My husband's cheating on me." And so she goes and Joe Mullen goes and follows the husband, and then the husband eventually makes contact, and there's some sexual attraction between Joe and the wife, and between Joe and the husband, but not a lot, right? But it's that perspective, and again, you know, I'm heterosexual. Does that mean I'm attracted to every single woman I come across? No, of course not. But yet there is that perception. It's maybe a perception that's not as common as it used to be, but it's like I personally know people, like guys that I went to high school or whatever. It's like, I don't want to be around gay guys because all they'll do is hit on me, or want to have sex. It's like, how full of yourself are you? Not every woman wants you. That means not every man wants you. And it's kind of what Joe pushes back against this couple here. She's like, you guys hired me and it was just a big game for you. Just because I'm bisexual doesn't mean that I want to have sex with every person, walking. That would be ridiculous, right? So I did enjoy it. I enjoyed seeing Joe kind of lose her temper and lash out at these two for their ridiculous thoughts about what it means to be bisexual. So I did enjoy that, and like I said, the aesthetic I think just really worked with the black and white or gray against the green, especially when Joe lashes out. I think aesthetically it was pretty interesting. So, what do you think?
Um, I, well, I echo a little bit of your sentiments on this one, except for the fact that I actually, it was clear to me that was the message they were trying to get across is that, yeah, not all bisexuals want to screw everything that walks. Uh, but I actually thought it failed in that regard because Jo Mullein did flirt with both of them. She was attracted to both of them. And I actually thought I thought for a moment that she was actually going to sleep with both of them. And she actually in the Far Sector's comic book, she is intimate with a woman, and she's she's very flirtatious as well. So I actually think that my familiarity with the character, I thought she overreacted here and was the bad guy in this story. They flirted with each other. She flirted with them. She was attracted to both of them. They were in the room, and then Jo Mullein decides to attack them at the end. Attack them for what? This is violence. This was just straight up violent. This was assault, and this was done by Jo Mullein. I mean, the comment made to her. I mean, these were people that this couple they were attracted to her. She's in their room, and they say to her, "I mean, you're a Green Lantern and a bisexual. It's just funny. We aren't exactly known for our willpower, haha." And then she freaks out and says, "What did you just say to me?" I mean, I
Yeah,
mean,
but
how many
in her
people?
defense,
But just a minute though. I just want to back up for a second. I know. Bisexuality is very common. It's much more common than homosexuality. All right. This preconception. There isn't this huge preconception that bisexual are going to go around and they're going to sleep with everybody. I thought this was ridiculously overplayed, and I personally thought that I thought this was laughable and comical, and she should be ashamed of herself. The conduct of talk about having no willpower. I mean, the couple was right. The Green Lantern in this case was
that
in the
was not
wrong.
right.
I
No
mean,
way. Like
just
if,
it
if
was
you haven't
appalling
if
her
you haven't
conduct.
if you haven't experienced that people think that, then that's great. But again, I don't even live in that world, and I've experienced that. Maybe not specifically with bisexuals, but definitely with homosexuals, where people think, oh, if it's a gay guy, he wants to sleep with
I'm just
every guy
saying.
he comes across.
Look,
But
I'm
but
just saying the way this
the
was
other
written,
part
this
of this,
doesn't come across well. I mean,
and I do agree with you that she does flirt with them, but there's a far cry from flirting to actually, you know, what these two want to do to her. And the other thing is, you
they
say
want
she's
to have
not
sex
gay.
with her, and she assaults them. They didn't do
They
anything. They expressed the sexual interest, and she assaults them.
but they're not express. They're you read Far Sector, right? You know that these plants are carnivorous and they eat people, and they say to her, uh, you know, you're the perfect thing to break our carnivorous fast. They're going to literally eat her. It's not. It's a for the plants. It's all like their sexuality and eating of meat, of flesh,
Well,
and the smell. That's all like one big like sort of ecstasy moment for them. So they're threatening to kill her. They're going to eat her. They're going to break their carnivorous fast by eating her, and they attack her with their
well,
plant tentacles,
well.
and
Then,
that's when she freaks out. That's when
well,
she freaks out. So I don't
well.
see it as assault so
It
much
didn't.
as self
It didn't.
defense.
Okay. Well, there's. Okay. All right. I'm seeing the tentacles now. Is that what that was? Okay. I thought
Yes.
maybe the art was. I lost a little bit in the translation looking at the art there, but when she says what then the real reason why she should be angry is that these turned into tentacle. This was a tentacle creature. She shouldn't be angry because they think that bisexuals want to just have are sexual. I mean, the motivation here. I mean, if she's being attacked and her life's in danger, I mean, they're just luring her in. I don't know. Like this thing just sort of like it was lost in translation for me. I
Well,
but
fair enough. I thought it worked. So didn't work for you. That's fine. So Let's move on. The next one is Public Display of Electromagnetism. Stars the Ray. Um, this might Greg Lockhart writer, Giulio Massioni as the artist. This was probably my least favorite. Let's face it, the Ray's a pretty minor character. Um, in terms of the story and the message it sends, I get it. The Ray sort of freaks out when his boyfriend tries to kiss him in front of a bunch of other people. Again, he's not 100% comfortable with being, out, with his sexuality and what have you. I mean, everybody knows, but it's one thing for everybody to know. It's another thing to actually, kiss your boyfriend in front of people. And it's not like you're shoving it in their face, but anyway, it freaks him out. And so again, it's sort of a heavy-handed message, and something I'm sure a lot of people who have struggled to come out and be honest about who they are, or they've been afraid to be honest about who they are, could probably relate to. But I don't have that experience. So for me, like, again, I understood it, in terms of the meta textual stuff. But it was like, I don't know, maybe if it was somebody that I was more familiar with or more invested with as a character than the Ray, I would care more. But yeah, I was just this one's just kind of shrugged my shoulders like, okay. So yeah, I don't really have much else to say about it. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. It was I don't know much about the Ray. It was I mean I think the last time my affiliation with the Ray, I always think of him more when I think of the Freedom Fighters, but that might be a different,
That's a
probably
different, yeah,
that's a
different Ray.
different Ray. So I can't really say I've ever had an affiliation or a familiarity with this character, and but this is just a guy who's shy, who's typical situation. Whether you're shy, you don't want to. Some people don't like public displays of affection, and some people are comfortable with it. Some people aren't, and it's a great title for this series, Public Display of Electromagnetism, appropriate for the character's power set. Um, I thought it maybe a little tropey. There wasn't, uh, we talked before, like, you know, with the Jackson Hyde story that we liked, there was some character moments, some actual character revelation there. I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit of maybe some character revelation here too, other than just the fact that he's breaking his shyness and kissing his boyfriend. Uh, but hey, like you said, it's tropey, but it's another. I'm sure it's something that people can relate to in terms of regardless of your sexuality, of being a little bit leery to show public affection.
Yeah, pretty much the only thing that I know about the Ray was that he was created by Joe Quesada. Joe Quesada is a co-creator, and I remember that foil cover from the '90s on the number one, where he's like flying up, and it was a
Right.
foil cover because of course it was, because it was, I think it came out in '94, so
Yeah.
right in the middle of the right before the crash. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Next up is Tim Drake, special delivery, story and art by Travis Moore. So the I
You
cannot fault
skipped
the
one,
art.
didn't you?
Oh, did I?
Bats in the Cradle.
Oh, sorry, I did. Yeah, so we have the Batwoman by Stephanie Phillips. Now, man, I really want a Stephanie Phillips Batwoman series. I love Bat as much as I wasn't, didn't watch the TV show, not a fan of the CW. I love Batwoman as a character. So I thought the art by Samantha Dodge was also very, very good. But this is another one where there's not a whole lot of the LGBTQ stuff in here, other than we get a little bit of a. It's kind of a quick and dirty origin story of Batwoman, and
Yeah,
it's
that's all it
narrated
is.
by,
It's just an origin
yeah,
story. It
yeah,
recites her origin. That's it. Nothing new.
yeah, yeah. But her father's the one that's narrating it, and I did appreciate that. As a father who has a daughter, and especially the portions where Kate has to come to her father, who obviously, strong military man. I, you wonder what his thoughts or opinions on LGBTQ would be if it wasn't his own daughter, who obviously he has love for. Um, what his opinion would be, and kudos to him, because there are some people who are so ingrained in their upbringing or old-fashioned thinking that they find out and they kind of disown their own kids. He swings the other way, right? And he's totally willing to die for her. And when she comes and has to say, yeah, I got kicked out of the army or West Point or wherever. I think she'd gotten through West Point, right? And she was in the army, and she gets kicked out for Article 125, which is homosexual conduct in the USMC, United States Military Code of Conduct. Um, and he's like, he tells her, like, again, unconditional love. You kept your honor, you kept your integrity. I love you, proud of you, what have you. Trains her to become Batwoman and whatever. So yeah, quick and dirty, but origin story, but a good reminder of what a great character she is. And don't get me wrong, Sam Cain isn't the, he's not going to win Father of the Year or anything like that. But he definitely loves his daughters. So I'll give him that. So yeah, I mean, it's a Batwoman story. It's Stephanie Phillips. So yes, I enjoyed it. It wasn't one of the not one of the ones that ended with a kiss. So that was something else it had going for it. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I thought it was well done. The art by Samantha Dodge I thought was pretty good. I like the coloring by Marissa Louise, and yeah, it was well done. I would actually, I absolutely wish that I actually think Stephanie Phillips would be a better fit on Batwoman than she is on Harley Quinn. And and having read this, even though this is just an origin story, there's something about Stephanie Phillips. I know she's into Muay Thai boxing, and I know she's, she kind of has that superhero mentality, and she's passionate about comics. She's more of a Batwoman than a Harley Quinn type in my mind. I know you were nice enough to let me sort of co-interview her that one time, and she seemed like you've interviewed her a number of times after that. So she seems like I think that would be right up her alley, Batwoman, and so we'll see what the future holds for her after. Who knows? I'm sure at some point she's going to be writing more Batwoman. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, didn't she do the Batman Urban Legends Batwoman story? That was a two-parter. I think she
She
did. I
might
think
have.
she did
I don't
both
know.
of them.
I can't remember.
Yeah, and yeah, and I still lament the J.H. Williams Batwoman story at the time was like the best art in comics, and he left the book because DC pulled some shenanigans about Batwoman's relationship. The whole nobody's getting married, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. It was so annoying. Because
Yeah.
man, that book was gorgeous.
And
So
his Echolands, J.H. Williams Echolands by him is fantastic. You check
yeah,
out that for those people who
yeah,
are interested.
yeah,
Anyways,
yeah. Go check out my chat with him, and then go
yeah.
check out Echoland.
There you go.
Yeah. So anyway, on to the one I tried to get to. I was so excited to get to it. Special delivery, story and art by Travis Moore. The art is absolutely fantastic. This does star Tim Drake. If you did read that Batman Urban Legends, I think it was a 3-part story where Tim, and you saw it before me. Tim goes out with, I don't. Do they even say the guy's name here? I was trying to remember what his
Bernard.
name was. Bernard. That's
Bernard.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, right after we read the first story, you're like, oh, they're gonna make Tim Drake gay or bisexual. I was like, I don't necessarily see that, but you were 100% right. I was wrong, and maybe I was just in denial. So yeah, this does add a different aspect to Tim Drake, and again, it doesn't bother me. It's just I haven't gotten my head fully wrapped around it yet. I think as long as I keep reading stories like this, I think it'll sink in through my thick skull. Um, so I do enjoy this. And here's the thing about it, right? Like, as much as I say, well, obviously they didn't plan on making Tim Drake whenever he was first created. They didn't plan on making him bisexual or homosexual. But if you go back and look, if you go back, and this is the reason, and I think I've heard people talk about this before, and not Travis Moore, but I'm trying to remember the name of the creator who did the Future State Tim Drake, Future State Robin, and has written and was the one that wrote the story of him with Bernard.
Megan Fitzpatrick.
Megan Fitzpatrick, exactly. Thank you. I think I saw her talking about this, and the more I've read these type of stories and seen Tim and Bernard together, the more it's sort of clicking for me. If you go back and read that Robin series, there's so many times where Tim, it was very rare, and maybe it was part of the whole dark and gritty time, but it's very rare that Tim seemed happy. He was very much a character filled with a lot of angst, not unlike Peter Parker back in the day. Always had these problems in high school and, juggling, trying to get good grades and relationship with Stephanie Brown and being Robin and, his keeping his identity secret from his parents. And then they find out, and then his mom's killed and his dad's injured. And it wasn't like this happy go lucky story or character. He always struggled to sort of fit in. And so I get what Megan Fitzpatrick is saying, that like, yeah, this actually works on that level. because when you read this story by Travis Moore, what do you see on Tim Drake's face? When he's with Bernard, he actually looks happy. He's actually smiling, which isn't necessarily something that I remember seeing Tim Brown, uh, not Tim Brown, Tim
Stephanie
Drake.
Brown.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, Tim Brown, the football player. But yeah, Tim Drake. Not a kind of a default setting that I'm used to him. I'm just not used to seeing him smile. And when he's with Bernard, he smiles. So maybe they didn't plan on it. Maybe that's part of the reason that they picked Tim Drake. Maybe we need more of a legacy character that's been around for this amount of time, and so it does actually fit. It does actually make sense, even if it's not the choice that I would have made for Tim Drake. Whatever. If I wanted to, I should have tried to become a comic book writer, and then I could have had him be who I wanted him to be. But this is who he is for DC Comics right now, and yeah, at least he seems happy. I'll give him that, because he is still my favorite Robin. So, what do you think?
This was artistically, this is absolutely beautiful. Like, this is a very well rendered. The final page in particular, with the happy first Pride cake that's been damaged because Tim Drake as Robin ends up getting, has his little stopping those villains, what have you, and it's wrecked. But it's a nice heartfelt gift for Bernard, and they're just they're very close, and the relationship is progressing, and this is very well done. This is very well done. This is it's unfortunate that that a lot of these stories, I wish there are particular moments and scenes in some of these stories that I wish were in the actual mainstream titles, because let's face it, this is not going to sell well, this anthology. This is not. This isn't. I mean, this is a.
I think it'll sell really, really well, but I think it'll sell to people who don't read the other stuff, and the people who read the other stuff won't
Well,
read this. You know what I mean?
okay.
I
I
mean,
hope you're
the one
right.
last
I
year,
I, I
the one
want I
last
want
year, the one
it.
last year sold really, really well.
Did it
But again,
really?
it's people. Yeah, yeah, it did. Yeah, it did
Well, I
extremely
know
well.
that with the love comp. I know that love is love comp thing. I
Yeah,
thought
the
sold really
Valentine
well.
one was a dog. Yeah,
Uh,
but again, you have people that are coming in that they want to support LGBTQ, and this is the only DC comic they buy.
okay.
This is the only comic book they buy.
Well,
You know
then
what I mean?
if you're right, and this sells well, then that defeats the point I thought I was making. I just I I know that, and maybe it's just my own misperceptions, but I know a lot of the people I talk about comics with, frankly, outside of us, because we review all these comics, because that's what we do when we do our for the podcast or for the live stream here. Uh, a lot of people that they don't read this. They don't read this Pride on
No,
the people that are
your point
reading
is
DC
100.
comics
Your
regularly.
point is
They don't read this,
100%. No, your
and
point is 100% valid. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. This sells really well, and it sold really well. Last year's sold really well also, but it's not selling to the people that read the mainstream DC.
yeah,
This is 6,000 people that never buy another comic that come in once a year to buy this. You see what I'm saying? They don't buy anything else. They don't care about anything else. They're buying this to support LGBTQ. That's what they think they're doing, right? And to see characters in the books to see themselves represented. And maybe some of them read other stuff, but most of them don't. You see what I'm saying? Like, it sells well, but
yeah.
there's not a lot of there's not a lot of crossover. The people that do need to see these character moments, to your point, are the ones that are fans of the universe that need that context for Jackson Hyde, or it would help to have this context for Tim Drake, that aren't going to see it. So I think your point is well made, actually.
Yeah. Well, I
So
mean, hopefully, we know that there was at least that one story of Multiversity Teen Justice that was in an anthology they took, and they reprinted it for free in the first issue of Multiversity Teen Justice. And so hopefully they'll maybe do something like this, because I do think a lot of these moments for these LGBTQ characters, a lot of these moments ought to be reflected in the mainstream comics, to the more of the mainstream DC audience. And I hope that happens.
yeah, I agree. The next story, probably my second least favorite, only because it felt very much like fan service, and it's also like, man, we've had a ton of Poison Ivy and Harley stories, but I don't know how you really do a Pride book without putting them in there because they're the most well-known same-sex couple. But it, it it didn't really do anything for me. You know, they're fighting because they have a misperception of who the each other is. I thought the art by Zoe Thorogood was really dynamic though. Um, Although the colors, the whole thing looked like I had to check the coloring on my computer screen because I was like, why does everything on my computer screen look bluish? There's like this blue filter over it from this Jeremy Lawson. So
Uh,
yeah, I don't really have much to say about this one. It was only okay. It didn't do much for me. What do you think?
I thought this one was the most. I don't know. I maybe it was just my own little fantasy playing because full disclosure, I really like Harley and Poison Ivy together. So they're like sexy. I love the characters. I'm just predisposed to like them because what's not to like? I'm a Purian fanboy at heart. I'm a white male heterosexual, and these gorgeous lesbians. Hey man, hey, I'm all for them. And this seemed to be the most. I thought was the most sexual out of all the stories, and so it was. Put a little bit of a shit-eating grin on my face when I paged through it. This was I particularly loved Harley and Poison Ivy are, they're teasing each other, and even though they're kind of arguing and they're getting into an argument and there's a misunderstanding, they come to some realizations about each other. They ultimately, I mean, they realize obviously that I mean, it's a little tropey. They love each other at the end, but you know, they end up with the kiss at the end. It's sort of like it reminded me a lot of the stuff with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang Harley and Quinn cartoon in the Harley Quinn comic book, except that the artistic style is obviously very different. Zoe Thorogood's art is it's very, very stylistic. And maybe it's not for everyone, but it does have its own sort of majesty to it that I kind of like, particularly with the coloring of Jeremy Lawson. So I thought it was fun. It put a smile on my face.
Oh, glad one of us enjoyed it. Okay, up next we have Earth 11 story. It's Teen Justice again. Rocky mentioned we talked about the Teen Justice issue number 1 yesterday, Multiversity Team Justice, and there's even a teaser for it at the end of this story. I felt like this one sort of had a lot of the same problems that the the book yesterday had. It's a lot of characters. They're all thrown at us at once. It not only is it the whole idea of a Jess Chambers, who's a non-binary character, so that obviously fits in with Pride Month. But then there's all these, like everybody else on Earth 11, their gender swapped. So if the character is a male on the regular DC Earth, they're female, and if they're female on the regular DC Earth, they're male. So you have that aspect of it as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean their sexual orientation has changed. But again, they're in the Teen Justice is in here because of Jess Chambers, and she's the one that narrates the story. She's identifies as non-binary, and they go up against the classic Teen Titan foes, the Fearsome Five. So it worked on that level for me, and there was certainly more action than we had yesterday or in this earlier this week's Multiversity Teen Justice. But man, if DC wants this to work, they need like I hate to say it, but like I don't want to say a slower paced book because I don't want it to drag, because then you end up with like Nubia and Queen of the Amazons #1, which is not the best way to hook readers for a debut issue. But I don't know, I just felt like the story, there was too much going on, there's too many characters. Maybe it's just we need a little dialogue box whenever anybody shows up, because we do get just a little box that says their name, but how about like their name and what their powers are, or that sort of thing. But we do get little dialogue boxes that tell us who the different characters of the Fearsome Five are. We don't get that for the members of Teen Justice. I just feel like people that are trying to understand who all these characters are and like, well, why is why is Robin female here? Why is Troy male here? That it's not. I don't know. I didn't think it was new reader friendly. There's a lot going on. It's kind of hard to follow. So anyway,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I again, I agree with you, and you know, it's funny, Jace. You and I can disagree on on a lot of things, and I kind of enjoy it sometimes. We have more fun when we disagree, and we can go back and forth, like when we disagree about a Green Lantern story or something, like we just had in this anthology. It can be fun, uh, but it makes me sometimes. I think when we've universally agreed every time we review something about Teen Justice, and it I agree with you 100%. It's just there's something about it. There's just it's we're not
You feel lost, right? You feel lost
yeah, I
reading it.
feel
Like,
lost.
what the hell's
I
going
don't
on?
feel just when I actually want to stop in some of the scenes and just maybe get to know some of the characters a little bit more, but we're jumping around, we're jumping to a different scene, and it's almost like what like the Flash Jesse Quick, with every time he she I guess talks super fast, and I feel the stories like that, and then it seems to me this is the entire concept of teen justice. We're supposed to be attracted to the concept. Oh, they're all gender swapped. Okay, but that's not a story.
Yeah,
Slow it
I don't
down. Like
find
the
it
concept
particularly.
is cool, but
I
the
don't find that particularly interesting. That's super tropey,
yeah,
you
and not
know.
only that, if you're gonna have it in a Pride comic, and maybe I'm being overly like, so if you're gender swapping, then so if you're trans, does that mean like you're trans man, you're a trans woman then if you're on Earth 11? How does that
Yeah,
work for sexuality? Like, I mean, again, I'm not trying to be a, I'm just asking a serious question.
yeah.
Uh,
Are you a double agent? Are you a triple agent? Like,
yeah. And I guess if you're non-binary, that means you're kind of neutral. So that means, are you the same on
yeah, I
any
guess.
Earth?
Yeah,
Like I don't know, but anyways, it I want to. I'll give some credit. I will say this as a because we've been a little negative on it. Writers Danny Lore and Ivan Cohen. Ivan Cohen has been, and Danny Lore, I think they've been writing all the stories for Teen Justice. I can tell as a compliment to them. I will say that they have a lot of ideas in their head. I do think that. I do notice that there's consistency in the dialogue and the voices they're giving the characters. They just need to slow down and let the readers get to know the characters more. I do get a sense that they know what they're doing and that they have a story to tell. They just need to slow it down a little bit. I appreciate the fact that they want to get a story finished, because I you know, it's frustrating. I don't like too much decompression, but at the same time, it feels like they're trying to do a little bit too much. They're going from you know, they got to slow it down, like you said.
yeah. I mean, I don't think either one of them, has done a ton of comic work. I mean, Danny, her profile's been on the rise for over the last 5 years or so,
Yeah.
which is great because she's super talented. But yeah, I agree. It's kind of a mistake somebody on the newer end makes because they're like, man, we don't know how many more issues we're going to get, or we only have X amount of pages, and this is a story we want to tell. So, in order to do that, we've got to go at a breakneck pace, and there's a lot of dialogue, and it feels choppy. Um, and that being said, we should give credit to Brittany Williams, the artist, because there's a lot going on in this story, and the transitions from panel to panel, it really jumps around. It's not necessarily what you consider, traditional comic book storytelling, but she does a good job. I never had to stop and go back to a previous panel to understand what was going on. It was more feeling lost because, like Rocky said, I don't have any. I can't relate to these characters. I don't know who they are. And the only thing I have to go on is, okay, well, I know who their Earth Zero or Earth One counterparts are, and that's all I have to kind of go on. But their personalities aren't lining up with which they shouldn't, because they are gender swapped and they've had different experiences. They need to be their own characters. But it just makes it. Maybe that's why it's confusing to me. I don't know, but I agree with you. Like, slow down a little bit. Um, you know, maybe it's, and again, it all comes down to sales, right? Like a series of one shots or 8-page stories just starring, just one of these Teen Justice characters. So, I mean, the only one that we really have gotten to know at all is Jess Chambers. And even that is more like surface level stuff. So, anyway, there's one more story to go. In my mind, it's far and away the best story in the anthology. There is an advisory to the readers because it is a true story. Um, and so there's some language in there that could be triggering for some people. There's some slurs, gay slurs and whatnot. But it's called Finding Batman, and I have to applaud Kevin Conroy, who wrote the story, who that name sounds familiar. It's because he was the voice of Batman in the Batman animated series, which brought a ton of people to comics, brought a ton of people to Batman, and made them Batman fans. So this is him sharing his story as a gay man in theaters, or in theater, trying to become an actor and that sort of thing. And he's of a generation where it was very much not accepted. Especially, I can speak from experience. He grew up in an Irish Catholic family in the 50s and 60s, and the Catholic Church was very anti-gay at the time. So, I applaud Kevin Conroy for his bravery in putting himself out there with the story. I thought it was fantastic, more compelling than any of the stories, any of the other stories. And Rocky and I were talking before we started recording. I almost would rather, instead of these characters that are part of the LGBTQ plus community, telling the stories of these characters who are part of the LGBT community of the DC universe, I almost would rather have had them tell their own stories, like Kevin Conroy did. Maybe their stories aren't as interesting as Kevin's because they weren't all the voice of Batman, or they weren't all the voice of beloved DC characters. But there's something that's really compelling about, everybody has a story. It's why I love people. I love hearing people's stories. Everybody's been through stuff. Everybody has baggage. Everybody has interesting stories to tell about their life and the experiences they've had. And I find that to be compelling, and sometimes much more compelling than fictional made up stories of superheroes. So I thought this was fantastic. Again, I felt it was super brave from Kevin Conroy to share this. And I don't know, like, before this was announced, that I knew Kevin Conroy was gay, but apparently it's not like he's necessarily been hiding it, at least not in the circles of Hollywood, from the things that he went through. So again, I just thought this was great. The art by Jay Bone, it's very independent comic looking, and there's very light color. It's basically black and white with like some blue tone as opposed to gray tone. Um, and I thought it worked. I thought it worked really, really well. I love this, far and away, without question, my favorite story. And again, I think it will inspire some people to be true to who they are. So, what were your thoughts on it?
I thought this was really heartfelt. Full disclosure, I had no idea. I had no idea that Kevin Conroy was gay. I had no idea. I found out reading this, and wow, what a story! What a this is a story of this is an inspiring story. Good for him, and it's heartfelt, and it was actually even a little some tragedy here as well, but with a happy ending. I mean, and I love how. I just love how it ends with him getting the job as the voice of Batman. I mean, here's a guy who, so how many, so many people who I can only imagine growing up feeling different and apart because of their sexuality, not having a voice. And here's one of those individuals growing up to be literally the voice of Batman. I mean, really, you couldn't, I mean, just saying it that, it's like, wow, what a great story. And the way that he relates, when he applied for the part to be the voice actor for Batman, how could he relate to that? Well, just as Bruce Wayne, his parents dying in his arms, and he's recalling him there being by his father's bedside, and also helping his brother, who was I believe his brother was struggling with addiction and alcoholism, and he found a way as an actor and as a voice actor, and find his voice, which became Batman's voice. That's how we related to that tragedy. I thought that was a very, very, very personal story here, and it worked very, very well. And I think the art was perfect for it. It didn't need to be colored. I mean, the subdued nature of the black and the blue and then that final working into that final panel of just plain stark blackness, and the picture of Bruce Wayne instead of Kevin himself. I thought it worked extremely well. By far, this is by far the best story here in this entire anthology, and it's almost unfair to compare it to the other stories because this is a real story, and it just goes to show you that the true, actual, real stories are the best ones to tell. Every life is a biography, and I'm really glad that Kevin shared this one with readers.
Yeah, again, it's the guy's had an incredible career. Did you know that when he was going to, I think it was when he was going to Juilliard in New York, that his roommate was Robin Williams.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, and he
Wow.
was also friends with Kelsey Grammer, who was there at the same time.
Oh,
So
wow. That's
yeah,
something. Wow.
yeah, he's such a nice guy. Like I've interviewed him before, not for the podcast, but in never one on one interviews. It's always been like roundtables when he's doing press. Like when I was at New York Comic Con a few years ago, there was a press room for the 25th anniversary of the debut of Batman the Animated Series, um, and I think it was 20th anniversary, 25th. I don't remember, but anyway, yeah, he's a super nice guy. Obviously, really really talented. And I love the fact that um, I I don't know, was it the CW that he got to play an older Batman, like a live action older Batman?
Yeah, in Crisis,
Yeah,
they had the Crisis
yeah,
crossover,
yeah,
on for the CW network. Yeah.
yeah. I thought that was fantastic. So anyway, that does it. That's the Pride anthology for this year. I have to admit, I enjoyed last year's stories. I thought the quality overall of last year's stories were just a little bit higher. I enjoyed them a little bit more. Not to take anything away from these stories, I know these creators poured their heart and soul into them, and again, I'm glad this exists and it gives a chance for people that are part of the LGBTQ plus community to see people they can identify with in comic stories. Um, but far and away that Kevin Conroy story, like you said, heartfelt is the perfect word for it. Heartfelt and brave, I would say, are the two words I would use to describe it. Definitely worth the price of admission. So, any last thoughts before we close it out?
No, I just uh, you know, full disclosure, I had some reluctance wanting to before diving into this 110-page comic, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. It just and it, this, I learned some things. I actually did, and it just goes to show you that sometimes that's why I enjoy reading these comics with you. And there's always something. I'm a little bit smarter now than I was, an hour ago, God forbid. And then I'm gonna probably go and have a drink of whiskey, and I'm gonna lose a few brain cells. So, one step forward, two steps back. That's how it
There you
works.
go. There you go. That's life. Well, that's going to do it, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to Rocky's channel on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio only version of this, just head over to YouTube, do a search for Comic Boom exclamation point, Comic Space Boom exclamation point. Subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell so you know when new content comes out, and be sure and like this video and leave your comments below. If you're checking us out on YouTube and you want to be sure not to miss any of the audio only content on the Comic Source, just go to your favorite podcasting app or a podcasting platform on your favorite smart device, do a search for the Comic Source and hit subscribe. So that's going to do it. We really thank you for joining us and supporting as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.